Hello, everyone. Welcome to another community conversation hosted by your girl, HannahJoyTV, and the Promote Positivity Movement. We are so honored to be joined by another special guest today. Today's community conversation is called Promoting Positivity Through Financial Freedom. And we are joined by our brother here, Matt Gebre. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, Hannah. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here. Just for those of you who are tuning in, this virtual chat will touch on personal finances. It's going to touch on financial freedom and education. And we have someone here today. I'm just going to read a little bit about his bio so you all know who we're talking to today. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for spending your evening with us or your morning, wherever you are watching this from. And, we also want to send you love and light. We know that these are challenging times for everyone. And so wherever you are, just know that we're sending you a big hug and lots of positive vibes. So a little bit about Matt Gebre. Matt Gebre is a husband, a father, an analyst, and the owner of Habesha Finance. Habesha Finance and Matt Gebre are all about helping people on their financial freedom journey with the right education and tools. The Habesha Finance YouTube channel was created to inspire progress with videos that help people learn, earn, and inspire. As a first-generation American and a child of Ethiopian and Eritrean immigrants, Matt's mission is to inspire progress as people navigate through life in America and the diaspora at large. Get ready to live with purpose, build wealth, and make a difference. That is one of Matt's catchphrases, and you can subscribe to his channel on YouTube at Habesha Finance. And Matt also happens to be my amazing big brother. So we are so honored to have you join us again. Thank you, Matt, for being here with us.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. I appreciate it.
So
It's an honor to be here.
Oh, we're honored to have you. So let's dive right into it. We're thinking about obviously those being impacted. You yourself have been impacted. Everybody's been impacted by COVID-19. Can you talk to us a little bit about, how you've been impacted by COVID-19, both professionally and personally as it comes to financial perspectives?
Yeah, definitely. And, first, I just want to express deep gratitude for all of the frontline workers and everyone who is just putting the time in, police officers, everyone, just people out there who are helping people, coming to calls, just answering the call of helping our country and helping the world really at large. The doctors, the nurses, the people working at the stores who are still showing up to work day in, day out. Really, those are the people right now who, if you have a friend or somebody who is in that kind of space, in that kind of work field, then it's good to reach out to help them out, support them, whatever you can do. And so I just kind of want to start just by saying that we thank you for everything that those folks are doing right now.
Absolutely.
But in addition to that, just on a personal level, nothing much has changed. I'm at home every day now. And so a lot of the schedules and everything, I get to see how it is like on a 24/7 basis. And I have learned to respect and love my wife even more because of all the things I see that she does. I do get to work from home here periodically, but now it's just nonstop. It's every day until our work brings us back in. And so that's kind of been a little bit of a change, which I'm thankful for. I'm hugely blessed to be able to do that because I get to spend time with my wife. I get to spend time with my children, and it's just a blessing for me, a blessing in disguise, really, because at work we did experience like a pay reduction. But that's, when you compare that to the opportunity to work from home, spend time with the family, be there to see the kids on a daily basis. And you can't compare. I can't compare like the pay reduction versus that opportunity to be able to spend time with them. And on a financial level, now this experience has truly reinforced this idea, this belief I have around achieving financial freedom. And it's not just about being financially free. It's not about getting there, but it's not about being there already, but it's about the process and getting on that path to financial freedom, working toward financial independence, because along the way, you're going to be doing the things necessary to make yourself ready for times like this. At least you'll be better equipped to handle situations like we're in right now, where people are not working for months, weeks at a time. And if you start exercising some of the things that we'll be talking about that I'll be sharing here today, then for, God forbid, the next kind of situation like this that happens. But we know sometimes these things do happen. And at least hopefully people watching, people listening will be better equipped, better prepared, be like compared to this current time that we're in, which is a very challenging, difficult time for many people, family and friends that are close to us as well.
Yeah.
We see
Yeah.
that.
I mean, you already touched on some things just about being able to prepare ourselves, right, for times like this. And you mentioned, with the job situation, thankfully, you are still able to maintain. You work full time and you manage, your personal blog and platform, and that's just to me so inspiring how you're able to juggle all that in addition to, being a husband, an amazing father, and community member that you are. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but we just want to check in with you all too, to everybody who's tuning in. Again, this is a conversation about, pursuing financial freedom. We're going to be sharing education, tips, and tools so that we all can sort of, learn more about managing our finances and hopefully do a better job throughout these times that we're living in. So if you are tuning in, I would love to know what city, what state, what country you're tuning in from. Go ahead and just drop that location, drop that city, that country, and just give us a wave, give us a heart, give us something just to check in. We're going to do a check-in at the end to see, all the wonderful people we have here today. And also, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and write that out in the comment section, and we'll try to get to some of those as well at the end, depending on how much time we have. So yeah, so let's get into the mission of Habesha Finance. What is this all about? Tell us when it started, and congratulations on some of the success that you've already been able to reach in terms of how it's impacted so many people.
Yeah. So first, I have to put this disclaimer out that I'm not a financial professional. I'm not a tax professional. I'm not a legal professional. So anything heard here today is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And obviously, personal finance is personal. So some of the advice or things you hear in this video, in this interview, may not be something that you agree with, and that's okay. I think we all understand that this personal finance journey, this financial freedom journey, looks different for everyone. There is no like cookie cutter, way of getting to financial freedom. However, I have this opportunity to share some of the things that my wife and I have done, and some of our journey, and some of our story. So I'm thankful to be able to share that. So got that out of the way. Now, I graduated from Georgia Tech in 2009. Georgia Tech is a university here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I graduated with a civil engineering degree. I also graduated with $40,000 attached to that degree, $40,000 of student loans. And I didn't work right out being an engineer, a civil engineer. It was in the 2009 year. And if I don't know if you're old enough to remember, Hannah, but 2008, 2009 was just an economic recession. Jobs were scarce. It was very difficult for people in my class, in my year, to find a job, because it was just the most ridiculous thing where companies, we were literally applying for jobs, and they were asking us for, entry level jobs. And they were asking us, if you have any work experience. And I'm like, no, this is an entry level job that I'm applying for. How am I supposed to have work experience? And long story short, I was in my last year of college. I found a part-time job that I was working as a baggage handler for an airlines, and basically continued in that job, in that role for like a year after graduating, because I just couldn't find a job. And part of me was a little bit lazy, maybe because I gave up maybe too early. But it just, things have a way of working itself out when you just show up to work and you keep working hard and you keep putting the time in. And so after that, I found my way through the company, moving up, and blessed today to still be with that same company, and just be on the path to financial freedom. So, like I said, with that degree came the $40,000 of student loan debt. And even though I kept moving up in the company, my income kept increasing. Any thought of paying my debt off, any thought of paying my car note off, any thought of paying my student loans off was not in my head at all. It was just in the back of my mind. I was just thinking like, oh, I'm making this money. I'm going to spend it on clothes. I'm going to spend it on this car that I just that I just signed up for, this car note, and so many different things. I moved to LA, I moved to Philly, and just was just living a life that I couldn't afford. And obviously, there was a rude awakening eventually, and that happened for me, like after getting married, and then finally um, just seeing my daughter, and like during that time that we found out that my wife was pregnant, 2017 or 2016, I'm sorry. We were like, wait a minute, we're gonna have a baby, and we've got to figure out exactly how we're going to be able to afford to feed this baby, how we're going to be able to afford medical visits, how we're going to be able to afford the actual delivery of the baby, and so all that to say, like that really woke me up. That really kind of got the ball rolling on Habesha Finance, on this personal finance mission to achieve financial freedom, not just for me, but for others as well, who are kind of in that same mindset of, I've never really been taught the personal finance issues. I've never been taught how to invest. I've never been taught how to budget, how to manage my money properly. Let me just dig deep. Let me just do a deep dive into these topics and start learning and start just kind of taking in everything. So I went down this rabbit hole, and my wife will tell you, when I started, I never looked back, and I started learning so many different topics, so many different educational, knowledge, gaining so much knowledge that really helped me and my wife just get on our own path, on our own version of what it looks like to be on our way to financial freedom. Um, so I do have a message for those high school graduates who are ready to go to college, and if you're not going to college, if you're going into the workforce, or if you're going to the military, that's cool too. That's awesome. And this message still applies to you as well. But if you're graduating high school this year and you're getting ready to go to college, please get what was I going to say? I was going to say, you get that 4-year degree and make sure you get it debt free. Okay, it's easy to remember. That 4-year degree better be debt free, because you don't want to graduate and be in a situation like I was, and like so many people ahead of you were, because graduating with a 4-year degree, not even a doctorate, or not even like graduating medical school, that I understand, medical school, law school, these higher levels of education, sometimes you have to get student loans to be able to afford that education, because there is an expectation of an income. But when you're graduating with a 4-year degree like I did in 2009, I did have an expectation that I was going to get a job right away, but that did not happen. And so I ended up working this part-time job that was paying like $9 an hour, and I had an engineering degree that was not being put to use. And so my message to high school students, if you're on the brink of going to a college where you're going to have to pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year, your parents are trying to figure out a way to pay for that. Look, they have retirement to think about. They have so many other financial obligations they have to think about. Now, if you're going off to college and you're getting it a free ride, that's awesome. That I definitely have no problem with. But if you're trying to go to out of state because you don't want to be close to home, for me personally, my opinion, that's a terrible mistake. That's going to cost you a lot of pain and troubles and money at the end of the year. At the end of your 4 years or 5 years, it's just going to cost you more than you thought. So that's my message to high school students. And then college graduates, hopefully you're going to graduate debt free. But if not, don't be afraid to work. Like, don't be afraid to work. Bottom line, you have an opportunity, if you're going to graduate debt free, hopefully, to go back and live with your parents. Hopefully you have an opportunity to get an apartment with 3 or 4 friends where you pay like $300 a month or $400 a month. So that way you can focus on your student loans. That way you can focus on any credit card debt that you have, and take that opportunity to just get rid of it as early as possible after you graduate. Because the last thing you want is for interest to start building and to start accumulating on all that debt, and that $10,000 debt that you thought was just $10,000 is going to have a little bit extra because of interest that you haven't because you haven't been paying that off in a timely manner as quickly as possible. So for college graduates, please try your best to pay off your student loan debt as quickly as possible if you have any. Don't expect don't expect the government to bail you out. I've never seen, I don't think anybody's ever seen the government bail anybody out for student loans. It's just one of those things that has never really been on, the hierarchy or on the top level of who's going to get a bailout. And honestly, if you think about it, you borrowed that money, whether you realize it or not, or accept it or not, that's your responsibility, because you borrowed that money to get your education. And I was naive, I was ignorant when I was signing on the line to take those student loans, but it was still my responsibility. I was an 18-year-old kid who had the ability to get into an engineering school, so I should have been more prepared and just aware of what I was signing. That was on me, but I will say, like, try your best to get out of college debt free. Try your best to avoid credit cards for some time when you graduate college, and just have a plan. Try to come up with a plan, so that way, where you're headed. That's it. A little bit of a message for the students out there.
Yeah, and that's so important. And I know we're going to get into messages for families and, older adults as well, as we move on into this conversation. But I'm so glad you shared that, because, there's these times that we're living in are unprecedented. And I know that in some ways, you experienced, like you said, in 2009 when you came out, it was really hard to find work. But I appreciate that story of you sharing how you took on a job as a, baggage handler for an airline, and then you worked your way up to where you are now. And I think that's a message that can resonate with all of us. You never know what opportunity can lead you into different directions. And then also you mentioned this rude awakening that you had. Sometimes we need that. For you, it was your first daughter that was about to come into this world, right? And for some of us, it's going to look like different things. It may not look like a child, but it may look like something else. And so whatever that rude awakening is, really lean into that and see how we can overcome that lack of education. And so I think that all these things you mentioned, how you've never been taught these things growing up, so many of us can relate to that. So many people in this chat right now, this is not a conversation we have in middle school and high school, and it should be taught, should be, preached in high school. Like you said, you were 18 years old signing that dotted line, not knowing exactly what you were even doing, so I would also echo exactly what you said, but also even for those listening, don't be afraid to get that support. Don't be afraid to reach out to, people out there with these financial literacy blogs, and even your school counselors, or, I hardly ever visited my school counselor unless I was in trouble, but, I hardly ever did that. So I really encourage you all to, reach out, talk to your student counselors, talk to loan, people who are familiar with loans, and get that education that you need so you can better navigate that space. And speaking of navigating spaces like that, you do that through your channel, right? You do that through your YouTube channel. You cover everything from messages like you just gave to students to families, working families, people on unemployment. Can you tell us about some of the topics that you cover on your platform, Habesha Finance, and what some of the reception has been, some of the positive feedback you've gotten?
Yes. So YouTube is very interesting. Anyone can get on YouTube and start talking about anything and everything. And this is a very big responsibility, a dangerous responsibility, I would say, because people will watch and make choices based on what you say and what you do. And with that being said, I try to focus on the education aspect of personal finance, and just sharing like personal testimonies of us on our path to financial freedom. And so I use my experiences as an example of what to do and what not to do. So if you want to know about the time I bought a house when I was 22, literally the day before I graduated college, I closed on a house. And remember, this was 2009, so it was a recession time. So I'm not advising this. I'm not recommending this at all to anyone out there. Okay. But I remember taking a student loan just to be able to buy this house that was in, the city of Atlanta. And it wasn't even more than $10,000. It was very much less than that. And so I did that thinking I had an opportunity. And really at the end of the day, this house ended up becoming more of a burden than a blessing. And I quickly learned that I'm just not the type of person for real estate or flipping houses or whatever you want to call it, buying homes and selling them. Yeah. That wasn't something that I did, but I saw that as an opportunity. And sometimes opportunities will present themselves or disguise themselves, as an opportunity, but really it's not an opportunity. It's a distraction. That's what people, sometimes fall for. Sometimes we fall for these distractions, but I share that information. I share that knowledge on YouTube. I share some of the stuff that I talk about, as far as personal finance education, saving for retirement, saving for your child's education, 529 plans. And then even right now, because there's a lot of people that are talking about these topics right now, we hear it all the time, the stimulus checks, right? Unemployment benefits. And it's amazing to see just how much something you say on YouTube can have an impact on someone. Like just today and just the last few days, people have been commenting and saying, wow, I started this business last year that ended up shutting down because of what's been happening with COVID-19. And then I came across your video, and then I didn't realize that I was eligible to receive what's called pandemic unemployment assistance, which is the program that's in place right now to be able to provide unemployment to 1099 contract 1099 employees, self-employed people, the people who are gig workers, driving Uber, driving Lyft, doing DoorDash, babysitters, like all these people, taxi drivers, like especially in the Habesha community, the Ethiopian and Eritrean community. We have a lot of dads, we have a lot of parents who are driving a taxi cab, and right now they will probably could apply for unemployment insurance, but many of them don't know that. And hopefully the message has already spread through the country here in the US, that hey, if you're not working, please go to your state's Department of Labor website and put in an application for unemployment, because you're probably going to be approved. And don't worry about, like, if you haven't worked the last few weeks or the last few months, because guess what? Because you were unemployed during that time, as soon as when President Trump and our nation declared it an emergency and put it into law, you're eligible for all that back pay as well. So just because you apply today, you also could receive some of that back pay from, like, I think March 29th. So it's really important. The end of March, early April, you could receive all that back pay. So if you're missing that, if you're concerned, like, hey, would I be eligible or would I not? Just hop over to the YouTube channel that I have. I talk about some of that stuff, some of that information. And I try to do it in a way that's like not biased or not, saying negative things. I just like your platform, Hannah, you talk about positivity, and I try to do that with a, through financial education. So hopefully that's something that people will benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. People are benefiting from it. We know people directly who have, shared their testimonies with us about how your videos have inspired them and impacted them. So I just, first of all, want to say thank you for educating so many people. And if you're tuning into this and you are interested in learning more about some of those benefits that he mentioned through an unemployment, please visit his YouTube channel, Habesha Finance. And I know a lot of yours videos focus on Georgia, because of course that's where you are, but you do have general information there as well for people across the states. And it's very important that you make sure to tap into your state's information as well, because sometimes it's going to be different. It is different based on the state. Yep. So definitely check that out. But yeah, we can't say thank you enough for all that free education that you are providing for us. So thank you once more. So yeah, I want to take it into a different direction. Earlier you had mentioned, right, when you were giving some advice, sort of being humble, right? I want you to share your story, because it is time that we hear you and your beautiful wife, Saba, who is tuning in right now. Mm-hmm. Shout out to that queen. She is just so incredible. You both are. But you two conquered more than $250,000 in debt. 2 children of immigrants who came here with no money, no English. Here you two somehow get together. I mean, what are the secrets? How did y'all do that? Can we please rewind back and share some steps that helped you all conquer more than $250K in debt together?
Yeah, so it's quite a story, just because of we never thought that we would be able to achieve that, And like I said, around the year 2016 when we got married, and then we found out that we were gonna have our baby, have our daughter, beautiful daughter. 10 months later, 11 months later, it was very nerve wracking because we were just like, what are we going to do? How are we going to afford this delivery? And then just life started happening for us in a different way. There's nothing, getting married is like, that first step for me was that first step for me to really to start becoming more responsible with myself. And then realizing that a child was getting ready to come into your life was like the next big step that really took it to the next level, because now there is going to be this life that you have to take care of. And so that really just woke something up inside me. And interestingly, before we got married, my wife and I took premarital counseling, and something that I talk about and recommend to anyone who is getting ready to get married, or I know, and I forgive me because I know, like, during this time, like, many weddings are getting pushed back, and so I'm truly sorry for a lot of those people who are experiencing that. Even us personally, we know 4 or 5 close friends who are getting ready to, who are postponing their weddings, and my heart goes out to them. And I just hope, like, this be an opportunity to just save more, learn more about each other, and just be thankful, like, you are still together, and that you still have your health, and that you still have a whole life ahead of you, that you can look forward to spending with each other. And I just want to mention that part. But
Thank
when
you.
I was looking back at our premarital classes, they were talking about finances. They were talking about just different things. How are you going to react to your in-laws? How are you going to, interact with them? Whose house do we go to for, Christmas? Whose house do we go to for Thanksgiving? But for a Habesha household, for Ethiopian Eritrean household, we go to both houses every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. We make it work. That's what we try to do. Even with 3 kids under 2, we were still doing that. But as I digress, I want to mention all those things because the premarital counseling gave us a preview into what to expect for our finances. And so that, along with being exposed to the different financial websites, bloggers, like Dave Ramsey, for instance, different people out there. One guy named Paul Merriman, and I'll share some of those links with you. These people who talk about investing and saving. There's also this thing called Choose FI, the Choose Financial Independence. It's a great place for people to just learn about even more about the topics of financial independence. And so I started going down this rabbit hole, and I realized, like, we needed to get rid of this debt quickly, because my wife graduated from law school. I graduated from an engineering school. Together, we had over $250,000 of student loan debt, and we didn't know how we were going to pay that off. We thought maybe we would just keep it for 30 years. Don't worry about it. Just pay the minimums, just as normal people do, just pay as we go. And so once we realized and we started doing some calculations, we looked at all the numbers. I think that's another part that really clicks for people, is when you see and start calculating and doing the numbers yourself. So we went, you can just type in, like, student loan payoff calculator. Go Google google.com. Just Google it, student loan payoff calculator. And what we found was that for our, if we were looking at the $250,000 of student loan debt, and we were just going to pay the minimum on that each month for the next 30 years, we would be paying $300,000 in interest. And that's $300,000 of interest on top of the $250,000 of student loan debt. And so that was a rude awakening for me. And then I showed it to my wife, and she was like, oh no, we got to take care of this. We got to figure something out. And so we became aggressive. My wife was a big saver. She's always been a great saver. I'm sure she got that from her parents. She just had, decent sized chunk of savings in her bank. And when we started learning about this whole thing called the debt snowball that Dave Ramsey preaches about, that talks about, we really said to ourselves, okay, so you've got this big savings, babe. Let's try to see if we can take like half of it and throw it at the debt. And I never saw, like, her look so mad or look so upset, look so scared. Like, are you sure? Like, are you really going to do this? And we took a step out of faith. We took a leap of faith on it. And I mean, we prayed about all this stuff. We prayed about like our finances. We pray about our marriage. We pray about our kids. We pray about our parents. Everything like that is part of our lives. We prayed about, and that includes our finances. And I'm not kidding you. When we did that, God, like personal, my personal testimony is like God just started showing us different opportunities to keep paying off that debt in an aggressive manner, in ways that we never thought. Like a random bonus check would come in for my wife, or something would happen, and then remember that house I talked about, right? That house became an opportunity to sell because like I said, I learned quickly that I just don't like dealing with buying a house, selling a house, flipping houses. That's great for people who love doing that, but I learned quickly that I'm not one of those people. And so what ended up happening was I sold my house. Yeah, I sold my house, and then we took that money and threw it at the debt. So the debt snowball, the idea of getting out of debt in an aggressive way, um, takes your uncomfort. It makes you a little bit discomfort, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling to have. But I think when you talk about financial situations and something like debt, you've got to feel uncomfortable, because I think that gives you that sign that you are moving in the right direction when you're doing that. And I know during this time, we'll talk about it right now, but during this time, that this is not the time to do that, because it's a pandemic and things are uncertain. I don't encourage anyone to be as aggressive with their debt like we were, paying off our debt. But um, because we did it the way we did, we went from potentially paying $300,000 of interest on top of the $250,000. We went from $300,000 down to about $18,000 of interest that we paid in that 2-year span. And so when you look at this, you're taking 2 years of your life. Okay, people, you're taking 2 years of your life, 3 years of your life, and you're going to sacrifice just a little bit of everything you're doing, buying a house, rushing to do this and rushing to do that. We lived at my mom's house for like a year while we were doing this. We were paying $500, rent to my mom to help. It wasn't as much as what she gave. My mom gave us like so much during that time. But she knew our goals, she knew our plans, and she supported us, and she was there for us. But we were just like very focused, and we were so aggressive. And so it's funny because I left my mom's the day I got married. I left my mom's house, and then we looked at everything. We said, wait a minute, we need to come back. And so I came back to my mom's house. I left my mom's house single, and I came back to my mom's house married.
How
And
old were you? How old were you at this point?
hmm?
How old were you at this point? Just so everyone knows, your
Oh, I'm
age.
sorry. Yeah, 2016. So I was 32. I think I was like 32, 31.
32 years
31.
old.
Yeah.
32 years old, moving back in with your mom,
Yeah.
wife.
Yep. Yep. And so um, it's very interesting um, to think about this kind of thing, because people want to grow up, people want to be independent, people want to start living their lives. And if you have no debt, I mean, that's so great. I'm happy for you. But if you find yourself in a similar type of situation, I hope you have people you can rely on and lean on, and use opportunities like ours, like we had, to go back to my mom's house, or you go back to your parents' house for some time. Like it's something that is actually not very rare. It's pretty common thing. It's just in certain communities it just is frowned upon, or like there's just this level of there's maybe possible a stigma, possibly, that, oh, you're going back to live with your mom, like that's not really cool. That's kind of embarrassing, right? But I'm telling you, it was not embarrassing. What's not embarrassing is being debt free. And I hope like people understand, like, being debt free is not embarrassing, and it's a beautiful blessing that I really hope people watching will work it hard, and at least are there to achieve, can achieve themselves.
Wow. I hope you all are hearing this. I hope you all are taking this in right now. I know we have so many people in the chat that are tuning in. Just to let you know, some of the people we have in here today, we got people from Atlanta, Cincinnati. We have people from Washington, D.C. We have some people in here from Chicago. We have some people in here from Virginia. We got people all around. So thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to drop your cities, drop your comments, drop your questions in there. I do see we have a few questions in there, which we'll get into at the end here. I see we have people from Florida as well. So shout out to everybody who's in this chat right now. We're hoping that this can give you guys some tools, some education, some information about, really, really, really pursuing this journey of becoming, financially free and living this journey
Yeah.
of financial
And
freedom.
And if I might add, like that experience of paying off that debt just opened up the doors to the next part of our life, which was, after a year of living with my mom, moving out, and we did rent an apartment for about a year before we moved into our own home. But we were very focused on making sure that we bought a house, um, with the education that Dave Ramsey talks about. If anybody ever wants to know about a book that, like, I read his book, The Total Money Makeover, in 5 days, and that book was very eye opening. Some things I didn't necessarily agree with, some things I wasn't, very fond of or whatever. But in the sense of like getting out of debt, I don't think there's anyone better who explains it, who talks about it than him. And what that ended up doing when we got out of paying all those student loans, what that opened up the door was to buy our house. And if I may say, like, it's really important for people to understand, especially if you're young and you're growing up, to just take the opportunity to know what your financial, uh, what can I say, status is. Your financial status is, what can you afford? How much house can you afford? It's really important when you get down to like the nitty gritty and you get down to the details. Like, we were very focused on putting 20% down for our house. And we were also focused on getting a 15-year mortgage. And we were also focused on making sure that our monthly payment for the mortgage for the house was not going to be more than 20-25% of our overall income. And so you say, wow, okay, like, how does that work then? Like, how am I supposed to make that happen? Well, you've got to figure out how much house you can afford. If those numbers don't line up, maybe the house you're trying to get is a little bit too expensive. Maybe you need a bigger down payment, which means you might have to stay in an apartment for a little bit. You might have to live with mom and dad for a little bit. And I know there are certain scenarios, certain situations where you have a family and you're in a very difficult situation, maybe in an apartment or where you're living, and you have to move into a house. I get that. For us growing up, we were living in government subsidized housing, and we had to move out because the high school that we were supposed to go to was not going to be a good high school. And my mom took it upon herself to move into a house in a better school district for me and my sister. So I understand that. But if you are in a situation where you can afford to wait a year or 2 years just to be able to save that 20% down, get a 15-year mortgage, clean up some of your credit, pay off some of the other debts that you have so you can boost your credit up, because with that, you'll be eligible for a better interest rate. Then personally, that's what I would say to do. Wait a year, give yourself a year, 2 years, before you just rush into buying a house. You want to be able to afford the house. You want the house to be a blessing, not a curse. And I just want to tell people, like what we're talking about is achievable. I love this quote that is very important for personal finance and financial freedom as well. And it's what Will Smith said about building a wall. What he said was, you don't set out to build a wall. You don't say, I'm going to build the biggest, baddest, greatest wall that's ever been built. You don't start there. You say, I'm going to lay this brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. You do that every single day, and soon you have a wall. The same thing can be applied to with your personal finance, your financial freedom journey. You don't build wealth, you don't buy a house, you don't do it just in one day. Everything, it's all about like small little actions that are going to build up and build up and build up. And those are those bricks. Each of those bricks is build a wall, help build your wealth, helping you build that financial freedom dream that you have. And so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. And I understand there are some people who are going to get there faster than you, but that doesn't mean you can't do this. You have to change your mindset, fix your attitude. If you can learn to live on less than, if you can learn to save, if you can learn to invest and spend wisely, then you can definitely achieve financial freedom that feels impossible. You can do this because it's not about achieving it right now. It's not about achieving it today. The mindset that my wife and I have, it's It's going to take 20, 30, 40 years for us to achieve. But along the way, we're getting there. We see the fruits of our labor. We see everything that's happening with that, and I'm thankful for that. And let me tell the young people right now too, if you're in if you have an opportunity, when if you're working, or if you're wondering, like, should I invest while I'm paying off my debt? Should I do this and should I do that? You know, the greatest one of the greatest lessons, or one of the greatest messages I got early on when I was working for the company that I'm with today. I've been with for 11 years. This guy in Philadelphia, he was one of the old heads. He was like 60 years old at the time. I don't know. But he looked at me and he was like, Matt, are you saving for retirement? And I had no idea. I had not even done any kind of saving. I was like 23 years old. So this was like this was 10 years ago. I had no idea. And he was talking about a 401k, and he was telling me this and that. And then he finally said something that kind of stuck with me that I never forgot. And he said, Matt, listen to me. You've got to start saving now. So I'm 23 years old. I'm like, what are you talking about? You've got to start saving, and you have to save until it hurts. And I was like, what do you mean by? And he was explaining, like, you've got to cut as much as you can down and just start saving as much as you can right now. Of course, live your life, enjoy, donate and support causes that you care about along the way. But if you're asking me, like, hey, Matt, do you want to go buy like 10 new pieces of clothes, or 10 new shoes and all this? I'm going to tell you, no, that's not really my style. Personally, I'm the kind of person that I'm content with having like the wardrobe that I have, and not having to buy new stuff or buy new things, or upgrade my car. I'm still driving my 2007 Scion TC that has like over 200 something thousand miles on it. It's paid off. Okay. And I'm perfectly content with driving that car. I'm perfectly content with living this kind of life, because it's not adding to my overall wealth. It's not adding to my personal financial goals. And like I said, everyone has their own dreams. Everyone has their own goals. And if you're someone who likes to buy nice things, that's for you. I respect that. That's fine. I would just encourage people who are like that to make sure, like, how's your net worth looking? Do you have more assets than your liabilities? Is your net worth positive? Is it really, really, really positive, or is it really negative? And that's when we need to start peeling back some of the things that may be keeping you from truly building wealth, having a positive net worth. So I just wanted to add that part to what I just said.
Absolutely. I mean, you're giving us so much great stuff here. And I mean, you've hit on so many things, even in that last segment, just from your humility and your vulnerability and sharing with us, right, of not being ashamed that you lived with mom for, a year or two with your wife, right, bringing a wife home. And I have respect for you, because I think sometimes in our generation, we're ashamed to share those kinds of things, or we're embarrassed. But you're right. There's nothing wrong with leaning on those around you, whether you have parents or friends or cousins or anything like that, being able to lean on the support around you. And then, you talked about marriage counseling, how you and your wife were able to come together and talk about, your situation, right? You have to discuss those things. I'm not married, but from what I can learn from you and other people is that you do have to talk things out. And finances is one of the things that you have to talk about. So thank you for hitting on that. Thank you for sharing that message. And also you talked about, paying the minimum on loans and how that can hurt us, right? Whether that's loans or credit card debt. And I'm just going to share something with you all personally here. This is me opening up and being a little bit vulnerable as well. My brother here, Matthew, has inspired me to stop using my credit card. And I can say that this year I was able to pay off my credit card debt, and I cut that card up. And I shared that as soon as I did that, I sent the picture to my family, because for years, ever since I got that credit card, my brother said, don't do it. Don't do it. And I'm not saying I'm not against credit cards, but I knew that personally, I'm not in a place where I want to even use one right now. I had just put myself in this hole that I needed to get out of. And thanks to him and his encouragement, I was able to, pay that off slowly and eventually, cut that out. And I do have other student loan debt that I'm still working through, but I'm just happy to know that. And I thank you for pushing me, you and Saba. you're my amazing sister-in-law, your wife. So thank you both. And I want to share some other tips. This has been so helpful. You've been sharing so much, from the snowball effect to other practices. What other practices can you share with anybody tuning in about managing finances? And just to let you know, we do have some more people that are tuning in. We have people in here from London. We have people in here from Florida, Orlando, Texas, Colorado, California, Virginia, Atlanta, Chicago. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We have about another 20 minutes left in this show, so stay with us as we get through some more. So what other practices can you share with us today?
Yeah. So hopefully, uh, people are understanding where I'm coming from, because I really want folks to take control of their finances. And some of the best practices, at least I can speak in terms of right now, what we've done. We've really cut back on spending. We've stopped contributing to our retirement, our 401k, which is the retirement savings plan that is offered through our work. We both just stopped doing that because we wanted to ramp up our savings. During times of uncertainty, during challenging times, I think it's really important for people to build up that emergency savings fund, which I talk about, on obviously the Habesha Finance platform. But save, save, save. You have to cut your expenses, especially right now. Especially if you're very serious and you're ready to get on this journey to financial freedom. Cut the cable, cut the Amazon, cut the Apple TV, cut the Kindle. There's a library down the street you can borrow books from. You can even, order books online through the library. They have that available to people now. iPhone app subscriptions. You may have to pause contributing to your retirement depending on what stage you are in life. If you're closer to retirement, obviously you don't need to look at doing that per se, but you folks have got to really you know take this time, especially when there's times of uncertainty, to build up that emergency fund. And what I have available, and we'll figure out a way to make this available to people. Hannah, is this checklist. I did this. I created this checklist, and so people who've been following Habesha Finance for the last several years, since we started late 2016, created this checklist to kind of just go over some of the things that people can do. People can just check off. It's just a checklist, and then you check it off. Okay, I did that. I can move on to the next thing. It's not a complete financial program, to get from A to Z, but it gets you from A to uh, uh, M or N. It gets you halfway there, and then hopefully, as we grow, as we all grow, it helps you get to where you need to go. But one of the things I talk about, I include on that checklist, is having life insurance. A lot of people, especially in underserved communities, minority communities, we're not aware of this idea of, oh, life insurance, like that's a scary kind of thought, because what happens, you come to terms with your mortality. You come to terms with the fact that I may not be here tomorrow. The reason why life insurance is so important is because if you find yourself in a situation like my wife and I did, you know, she's got 200,000 plus student loans because of law school. And then, I also have student loans. Now, if something were to happen to me, guess what? My student loans die with me, right? My student loans go with me, but she still has to face that $200,000 of student loans that she has. And what kind of husband, what kind of father would I be to leave her without a life insurance policy to face that $200,000 student loans with, to face life with, especially with kids involved. And it's really important for husbands and wives and parents in general to consider getting life insurance. And I know there's a lot of debate about what kind of life insurance to get, but if you're asking me, my personal opinion, it's term life insurance. Okay, it's just regular flat term life insurance, and get like 10 times. Okay, 10 times your income. I think that's just the general rule. And life insurance, it's like car insurance. You need it for a certain amount of time, and you don't need it for the rest of your life, because what are you doing? You're saving, you're investing, you're building up your retirement fund, you're saving in a taxable fund where you're buying investments. Maybe you're buying a real estate. You're doing whatever else you need to do in the meantime for that 30-year period where you have a life insurance policy in place. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense for people who are watching, because like we see it happening in our communities, and some of the parents are good about this, and that's it's so great to see that they already have life insurance policies. But I'm afraid like the majority of folks who may be watching or out there may not have a life insurance policy. And you go into this whole rabbit hole of whether to get term life insurance, and then even term life insurance, like what kind of term and life insurance do you want? Do you want to get just the term life insurance you pay for you have a set period of time you pay for it, 30 years, or do you want annual renewable term life insurance? There's that. You can get whole life insurance policies, which are cash value. There's a whole rabbit hole, and I talk about it on Habesha Finance. I talk about it on the podcast. I think I have like a few episodes dedicated to just life insurance. So people can just type in Habesha Finance /life insurance, and you'll see some information about that. But at the very least, people should start with just a regular 25, 20, 30-year term life insurance policy that will cover, the cost of the house if something were to happen to you, your children's education if they're going to go to college, a wedding, maybe your children will get married one day, your wife or your spouse or whoever, to be able to support that person through many different challenges in life. And then even if you're not married, or you have anyone who depends on you, maybe there's an organization that you really care for, and you can still get life insurance, and the beneficiary can also be that organization. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but just because you're like, oh, I don't have anybody who cares about me or who I care for or who I take care of, like you still, if you support an orphanage or if you support homeless shelters, you can still get your own life insurance policy, and name that entity, name that organization the beneficiary, and that can be something like that just takes care of that organization in case like you, the person who's supporting them day in day out, are suddenly unexpectedly go away, and that's something that I think many folks just should really take seriously, and then with that, having a will, having some kind of will in place for your family, and letting the family know, like, this is the will that's in place, this is what's going to happen. It's really important for those parts of your financial journey to be established, and establish those as quickly as possible. And then some other things I talk about on the checklist, I'm just looking at it right now. Tracking your net worth, making sure that you're aware of all your debts, all your liabilities, all your assets, all the positive things that are adding to your net worth. And then just some other things also. Talk about emergency savings, having a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. When you check that, you check that. Are you budgeting? There's a couple articles I have about budgeting, and a YouTube video about budgeting that I talk about when I'll share some of that information here shortly. And then just, saving for college. Are you saving a college for your child? Are you saving college for, a niece or nephew? If that's always a possibility. And then just other topics on that checklist that I'll share with you, Hannah, so that way people who are watching can also access.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, just a lot of good stuff there. I feel like we could almost have a session on every topic you've mentioned today. We could have a whole 1 hour session on
Yeah.
just life insurance, a whole 1 hour session on, on budgeting. And speaking of budgeting, what are some of the best tools for beginners? Maybe if you can just kind of quickly list some out. And again, we are going to send you guys a link to that sheet he's talking about, so you can keep up with all that and also stay connected and access more information.
Yeah, so the budgeting is comes in different ways, different forms. When you start budgeting, you'll find apps on your phones, you'll find spreadsheets online, you'll find people doing it with a piece of paper and a pencil, and it really just comes down to what's going to work for you. I've tried so many different budgets. I would say 7, 8. To me, that's many budgets, and then I finally found one that was really great. And it was this Google Sheets budget that I make available through the channel. And through the Habesha Finance website, if you just go to habeshafinance.com, you'll see it on the right. It says, here, click here to access the Google Sheets budget, and you have to, sign up for the email list, but you can get the Google Sheets budget and then unsubscribe. That don't matter to me. But that Google Sheets budget that we use is you have to manually update it. And what I found for us, okay, is when I was connecting my bank account to these apps, it kind of took a personal, relationship out of the budget because I wasn't in tune with exactly what was going in and what was going out of our bank. It just happened automatically, and then I saw it. But when I moved on to this spreadsheet, that was a manual budget that I had to update with our income. I had to update what we were spending. I had to update, what we were projecting for the rest of the year. It really it was another one of those things that just helped change the way we looked at finances, because we said, oh, in 3 months we have, last year I said, 3 months we have property taxes due. Okay, so we're going to make sure that we're building up a separate fund for property taxes. In a month we've got, our daughter's birthday that we want to celebrate, and so we'll put a separate fund for that. We have our tithing that we give to our local church that we give. We have our, bills that we have to pay for on a monthly basis, and all of that is manually entered um, by either me or my wife Saba. And it's one of those things that you just develop the habits. When you start developing habits of doing that every other day or every 2 or 3 days, you just, I don't want to say you become obsessed with it, but you become like a professional budgeter. And there's nothing that gets by you, because you really do. If I'm people may think I'm extreme, but I have to make sure that I'm accounting for every single penny. You know, this is how companies keep track of their expenses. This is how companies rise to the top and become very successful. They keep track of every single penny. Now, why not you? Why not the person looking in the mirror? Person in the mirror, when you're looking in the mirror, you're more important. You're the most important person in your life. Like in terms of like what you can do. You have the most control over your ability to live your life, and if you don't look at yourself that way, like I'm very worthy. I'm very very important. I'm someone who has an important part in playing with my life, my role, my family. Then you've got to also look at your financial responsibility, and part of that is looking at yourself in a way that these companies look at, their spreadsheets and their budgets and their annual reports. It's kind of the same thing with our own lives. We have to look at ourselves and our financial lives in the same way and make sure that we're accounting for every single penny that's going in, going out. And I don't want to say like it's to become obsessed with it, but it's really to take control, take control over what you're spending, over what your income. Obviously you can't really control your income to a certain extent, but take control of the budget and making sure that you're accounting for everything. So that way, like, oh, I got to cut this expense out. I don't need cable. Look, like I said, I still drive the same car I'm driving. We haven't had cable. Like our mom, we cut cable. I'm pretty sure like 2000, 2002, 2003. And I haven't missed it since. I haven't missed cable since. I see, especially now, I see everything on YouTube. It comes out the same day. I see my ESPN first take. I see the updates on YouTube, whatever it is I want to watch. Like it's out, it's online now, and it's unfortunate, for some of these companies, but it's like the technology, the way we're moving, the way everything is advancing so quickly. There are ways to be able to hack, your ability to save money. There's always a way to save money on any kind of expense, any kind of, anything that you're spending money on. Just ask yourself, do I really need this? Is there an alternative to what I'm spending XYZ, on a monthly basis, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. I mean, there's just a lot to take in here. I know I'm already just like so inspired to, budget better. And you just make me want to, like you said, where is
Yeah.
every single penny going?
Yeah. And I'll say budgeting, it takes a few months. It takes 4 or 5 months to really get the hang of it. So give yourself that grace.
Okay. And I know you have videos as well where you help people walk through budgeting, and you even have
Mhm.
tutorials and webinars all on your YouTube channel as well. So if you want more, you can access there. I know that there's a ton to go through, and we're already about an hour in. So we're going to go through just one more question
Let
here.
me keep going.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I know he's a father of three, and
No,
husband.
and I apologize why it's so late because our kids have a bedtime, and I told my sister like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I have to do it this time because I have an obligation to make sure that my kids are asleep and I don't wake them up when we're doing this." So I apologize to people watching, like, "Oh, why is it so late?" And I'm the one to blame for that.
No,
Or
it's
my kids are.
well, my beautiful nephews and niece, just beautiful children. And I just want to say that, for people who weren't able to catch this live, this is all going to get posted on Facebook and YouTube. So if people want to send it out to their friends, make sure to share it with your friends. If there was a certain section that you saw, I would encourage you just to go back, find that time. And, if it applies to a friend, say, hey, tune in at, 25 minutes, and at 25 minutes, you'll hear all about this and that. So just feel free to share it and everything like that. So I do want to we're going to get to some of your questions and some of your lovely comments. I see so many people in here that we are familiar with, that we're not familiar with, just a lot of people in here. Shout out to everybody tuning in with us here with us tonight or this morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. I did see that we had some more people check in. We had some people here from Philadelphia. We had some people from New Jersey as well, in addition to all the other states that we had mentioned earlier. So, and countries. Shout out to London. I saw we had here too. So thank you to everyone. I want to ask you though, we talked about budgeting, right? Can we just hit on, because everybody wants to do this. Everybody wants to save more. And I know you've talked about it some throughout this conversation, but could you just touch on that a little bit more, how we can all just save a little bit more?
Yeah. So there's it's like an honest opinion of mine that part of saving more is trying to earn more income, right? You have to get your income up and you have to get rid of debt. That's really what it to me, that's kind of what it boils down to like, I can't tell somebody to save 50% of their income if they're making only xyz amount of money, and that's all they're able to do. It may be different for each person, and so I don't want to get into that kind of discussion. But what I would say is focus on maybe one extra job or something. Focus on something that you on a bringing in an extra source of income if it's possible. Obviously, during this time right now, it's very difficult to. So I can't really encourage that right now. But I know we'll get through these times, hopefully very soon. And once we do, though, it's one of those things where folks have to try to get their income up, and at the same time get rid of debt. And so, if possible, in the future, okay, this is not for right now, but in the future, working an extra job will help, okay, to help you build that emergency fund, help you save a little bit more, help you get rid of debt quickly as possible. um and really, for those of you just starting out on this journey, it's really important to understand you're not you don't if you can't afford to pay certain things cash, then there's no reason why you should bring that on. Okay. And the only exception to this is obviously a house, a mortgage. Okay. For me, this is me talking on my opinion. And if you're one of those people who wants to use a credit card to build their funds up, and you want to build your credit up, well, just make sure that you're not building up a balance and you're carrying a balance each month, and make sure that you're treating that credit card as a debit card. Okay. If you don't have it in your debit card, guess what? You don't have it on your credit card to expense. And that's a mindset that I want people to really embrace. Is this credit card is only going to be used as a debit card. And if I don't have it, if I'm not spending it already on my debit card, like let's say you have a monthly car insurance, right? That you pay, you drive. And so you're obligated to have car insurance and you pay that monthly. Well, if you wanted to bring it on a credit card and use that as your way to pay for your car insurance, then that's fine. That's for you. But use it in that kind of, I would say just use it in that kind of sense if that's what you're interested in building your credit. and doing all those things and doing those types of things. But don't think like, oh, I can just charge it on my credit and I'm just going to work in some hours. You see, like, don't spend money that you don't have, or don't spend money in anticipation of money that you think you're going to get.
Mhm.
And that's a dangerous place to be, because like we see, jobs can get cut. Excuse me. Um, jobs can get cut in an instant, and so it's really important to have that kind of mentality. And then also, when it comes to saving, take advantage of your company's 401k, 403b, or whatever retirement savings plan, whatever country you're in. If you have a company that's giving you a retirement plan and they're giving you this match, like they're matching up to a certain amount for your retirement, I would say that's a great place to also save. If you're in debt, I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't invest more than the match, because my goal would be to focus on the debt, focus on reducing that debt. Because when you reduce that debt, you get rid of, not only do you get rid of the principal of that debt, you also get rid of the interest if there's interest on that debt. Again, this is outside of your mortgage, outside of your home. This is more so like consumer debt, so like car notes, student loans, personal loans, those kinds of things. Anything in collection that you need to clear up. Those are the kinds of things that I would focus on while still doing like the match for with your job. So take advantage of that. If you're self-employed, look at a solo 401k, SEP IRA. Just because you're self-employed, you still have opportunities to invest in these retirement savings plans. And the wonderful thing about these retirement savings plans is the tax advantage benefit, where you don't necessarily have to pay taxes right now. So if you're in a high income tax bracket, it's really a great opportunity to invest in these retirement savings plans, because the um the understanding is when you retire, you're probably going to be in a lower tax bracket, right? Who knows? Maybe you'll be in a bigger tax bracket, but at least right now, putting that money in those retirement plans could potentially help reduce your tax liability when you file taxes. So 401ks, 403bs, all great for people to use. And the retirement savings plans that people have available to them at work are all great. And I also want to mention Roth IRAs. Those are also great to just to be able to look into as well, which again, I talk about on the podcast as well as the blog.
Yep, you sure do. Habesha Finance. It's really easy to find. HabeshaFinance.com,
Yep.
Habesha Finance on YouTube. We're going to take a couple of your questions now, since we are going to go get into that segment. I just want to say again, thank you to Matthew for his time, to Matt, our brother here, and also thank you for your understanding as well. I really appreciate the fact that when you're addressing some of these subjects, you are being sort of mindful of the times that we're living in. And we do realize that we're all in different situations, right? And some of the things that work for us, that would have worked for us before the pandemic, may not necessarily be the best case. So
True.
I just
Very true.
appreciate you providing alternatives to those options, and just being very encouraging when you share this advice.
Let me also add, sorry, before we do the questions. Um, Sometimes some people may say, oh, when I'm looking at my 401k, whenever I'm looking at my retirement fund, or if I'm looking into investing, hey, Matt, like, what is it that you're personally looking for? And remember, this is not like investment advice. This is just kind of education. But what I personally like to look for is our index funds. And index funds, the low cost, broad based index funds. And index funds basically help you invest in the stock market, or in any kind of asset class that the index fund is tracking, the index fund is providing to you. So let's just say the S&P 500, right? People are familiar with that. The biggest, for lack of a better phrase and term, the biggest 500 companies in the U.S. economy are in the S&P 500 index. Now, you can get this index. I'm pretty sure most 401ks are going to have something similar to this. So if you just log into your retirement accounts, if you log into your personal accounts, whatever it is with Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade, whatever these companies your retirement plan is with, make sure that you're looking for what's called an index fund. And the reason why I like to do that is because, one, the fees are low. So I'm not paying an extra 1% right? So if, let's just say like the S&P 500, there are studies, academics that show like S&P 500 over the last, 60 years or so has earned about 10% annually, right? 10 or actually 11% annually. And that's before inflation. So after inflation, you knock it down to about 8%. And some financial experts like to say 7%. But let's just say you're in that range of 7 to 8%. Now, you're doing that, right? You're investing in the S&P 500. You're basically expecting like an 8% return over your money year over year over year, and on average, right? Some years, some years like last year, it's going to go to like 30%. And then some years this year, it may be down, right? But on the average, right? It's like a roller coaster. It goes up and down, up and down. But what we've seen over the past 60, 70 years or so, it's been on the rise, right? There's been ups and downs, ebbs and flows, but as a in the long span, there's been a gradual increase over the long term. So what happens is you've got some options in your retirement plan where you can invest in these things called actively managed funds. And again, this is another kind of like those controversial topics for the personal finance and investing world, which I don't want to really get too deep into. But I would encourage people to look at their investment choices in their 401k and just really compare what's called the expense ratio, how much you're basically being charged on your overall account to have those certain funds. And you can look at your year-end report for 2019, 2018, 2017, and then see, if depending on what funds you were, how much you were being charged to have that fund. And what I have discovered, what I have researched, what I have read is 90% of most actively managed funds, excuse me, sorry, do not outperform the index that they're usually tracking or they're trying to beat, right? So basically, you're going to do better simply by picking an index fund that's in your retirement account, and you're pretty much going to be doing better than around 90% of the other funds that are in that retirement account. And so you're still also going to be paying less over the long term. And that 1%, people may not realize it, but that 1% is huge. You're talking about 8% versus 7%, 7% versus 6%, 5%, and so forth and so on. It's huge. And that's just kind of a little bit of education that people should really go into their retirement accounts or their investment accounts and really see what they're investing in, and really just educate themselves, which we try to provide on the Habesha Finance platform. So
yeah, thank you for that wisdom. Thank you for dropping that knowledge. Hey, we are here for it. We want to take it all in. So thank you for sharing that as well. I'm sure that, there's so many more topics we can hit on, everyone, but, these are just some of the topics that we wanted to touch on. So let's hear from you. I know that some of you have left comments and questions. I see we have Boston in the building as well. So many of you all. I just want to display some of the comments here that we have. Again, we had people in here from so many different places from around the globe here, but I just, there's some comments here that I would like to show. We have Jonas Waldu in Las Vegas. Debt is the enemy and cash flow is an ally. So that was a comment that he left there.
I like that, yeah.
Thank you so much for that comment, for leaving that. And we had someone here when you all were talking about 250K, about paying off the 250K loan. Mashallah. Thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. Congratulations to you and your wife, and happy Eid to all of our Muslim brothers and sisters who are celebrating this weekend as well. And then somebody asked a question here about, are there any books that you guys recommend about the discussion or topic? I will let Matthew answer that. And I also want to say that someone else did say that you had a book in your background that was really, really good. I think it's that book, Profit First. So someone had mentioned that in the comments. So Matt, do you have anything for that?
Yeah, that book behind me, that's a really good book for self-employed or just businesses, small businesses. I'm like a quarter of the way in, but I'm just blown away by the principles in that book that the author, I think Mike, I can't really pronounce his last name, talks about. But for small businesses, that's a so far to me, I've enjoyed the book so far. Now if I remember correctly, there are about 3 or 4 books that I think I would recommend for people in different parts of their financial freedom journey. And then if you're just getting started, like I mentioned earlier, the Dave Ramsey Total Money Makeover is a great book that I read in 5 days. I'm not kidding. This was a great book that I read in 5 days. And this book just kind of goes through like the basic personal finance education and really is a great motivator for people to just take, take their finances seriously, if you will. And then another book that people I think will appreciate is called The Simple Path to Wealth. And this is more of like a little bit more advanced kind of, it talks about some of the things I just talked about with index funds and investing. And it goes in, and the author his name is JL Collins. And he gets into just a lot of those different topics of, spending less than you make and doing all these different things to make sure that you're on your journey, right? You're on the path to wealth. And it's called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. So I think those are 2 books. Like if you're on one side or if you're on another side, depending on where you are. And then another great book I like to recommend is The Millionaire Next Door. It's a study that looked at however many millionaires, and they looked at like their lifestyle habits and what they did and how they live. And it's just a good preview. It's a good scope into the lives of millionaires. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, they're not driving these fancy cars, they're not living in these like $2 million, $3 million homes. Like, these people are millionaires, and they're living these humble, good, like non-flashy lives, and they're very happy, they're enjoying everything, and they're living in that kind of way. So those are 3 books that that I really like. And a 4th book, like if you're really, really invested into, excuse me, interested in investing, I would say by the late Jack Bogle. He's the founder of Vanguard. It's like Fidelity, like like a brokerage company, and it's called The Little Book of Common Sense Investing. And this book, if I just look it up real quick, sorry, it's The Little Book of Common Sense Investing, The Only Way to Guarantee Your Fair Share of Stock Market Returns by John C. Bogle. And it's on Amazon. You can get it there. And yeah, you can get it there.
Awesome.
I got the book. And that book really, he talks about the same things. He's the founder of Vanguard. And I think he actually passed away last year. But he did so much. He's done so much for the individual investor. Like, it's no joke, because he's the one who created the first index fund, the low cost way of investing in the whole market, the entire, like, investing in 500 companies at once through this fund that he made available to all the individual investors. And so he was, many people respect him. If you're in the personal finance investing world, then you know about Jack Bogle, and like all the things that he did, the doors he opened to many individual investors. And at the same time, like, there is a time and place, I think, for having financial professional help, and I don't want to like knock like people who are in the like the financial professional advice area, because personally, like, I need that too myself. We're getting to the point where we need that third set of eyes to look at it and say, hey, okay, this is what you need to do, this is where you're headed. And having somebody do that for like an hour, 2 hours is a huge benefit, in my opinion, personal opinion, to making sure that you're headed down the right track. Because you're always going to think like, oh, I'm going down the right track, but you might not be looking at your overall, financial well-being. It's always good to have that third set of eyes, have a different outlook, especially from someone who's in the personal finance, and I mean the financial planning, financial advice world, who's seen more than I have, who's seen more than most of us, to be able to say, well, I know you did this, but let me show you what this person, like, let me show you what I've dealt with in the past, and just want you to be aware of. So I just want to make sure people are aware, like, at some point, you're going to need some sort of personal, like some sort of financial planning, professional help. And but what I really want to also say is you have to also, it's very important for you to learn as much as you can on your own. So that way you can just have those engaging conversations and talk to the people who are in that space, to say, okay, yeah, I understand that. I remember reading about that a long time ago,
Absolutely.
that kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Great recommendations and great point there as well. It is very, very important to have that support, that additional support from those professionals at some point throughout your life. So thank you for that. I want to show some more comments here. We have so many here, but just to touch on some of them. And thank you all for the kind words. A lot of people are saying, we're doing a great job. So we really appreciate that, everybody. I want to show this comment right here. Let's see. From I bet here, he said, if a $500 Ford can get me around, why would I get into a fancy car financing? So that kind of goes along with your point earlier about your Scion. And then someone here also said, check credit, debit card statements for reoccurring charges to cut out of your budget. Another good tip there. And then also use up gift cards instead of your cash. Remember what happened with Toys R Us. I think that's a great point too, because sometimes, we do. Sometimes we even have gift cards and they expire, so you miss out on that. So that's a great tip, a couple great points there. And then we did have a couple of questions here. I think a couple more questions here. I don't know if you have any thoughts or opinions on this, Matt.
Oh yeah, I do. So this is something that I talk about on the podcast.
And I'll go ahead and read the question. It was, what is your recommendation? What is your recommended percentage contribution for 401k, from Abdul Nasir? Go ahead.
So if it depends on where you are, right? Like if you're just starting out and you have debt, I would say like having invested up to the match, your company's match, is a great place to start. But once you get out of debt, like once we get through like these times right now, these pandemic times, our goal is to be able to put away, and I'm not just talking about like retirement. I mean, a 401k, but I'm also talking about like a Roth IRA, right? If I have my own business, having a solo 401k, or having some other kind of, retirement funds, right? That might be available to me, that might be available to my wife as well. But you're eligible for your 401k, you're eligible for your Roth IRA, even if you don't get the tax deduction. Remember, you can still do a Roth IRA. A traditional IRA, and then you can convert that into a Roth IRA through what's called a backdoor Roth IRA, which I talk about that as also on the podcast and through the blog. But when it comes to contributions to your retirement, I think maybe that's a better way of phrasing it. I'm pushing on my website to at least try to do around 20%, up to at least 20%. My goal, if for whatever it's worth, is to try to at least be around that 30% to 40% range of what we're earning. Obviously, it's hard to do when we still have a house, that we're paying a mortgage on. But once that mortgage is paid off, that's when we can really push our savings a little bit higher. That's why you get into a 15-year mortgage, because you want to be able to do those things right as quickly as possible, and limit the interest you're paying on the mortgage, how long you have that monthly payment that you're paying, and all those things that we just talked about, like, moments ago when we were talking about buying a house. I really want that to resonate with people. Like, saving 5%, 10% for retirement is not going to cut it. You've got to put in your mind, okay, I've got 20% at least. If you can do 20%, or just try to build up to that point over time, that will be a great way for you to start moving toward that path to financial freedom.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you all for your questions and your comments. There's plenty of comments here. I just want to show one more comment before we wrap up here. And this is from Etsahiwat Ayele. You guys are awesome, like sister, like brother. Thank you. See you on your YouTube. So yes, you can definitely follow Matt here on YouTube at Habesha Finance. And I just want to echo this point here to everyone tuning in, especially to my audience that is tuning in and joining us and meeting Matt for the first time. He is my inspiration. He is my hero. He is the reason I am the person I am today. So I know he doesn't want to hear this because he's so humble, but I just want to shout him out and just say thank you for everything, for being the rock and just being always a light in my life. I would truly not have this platform, HannahJoyTV, and the Promote Positivity movement if it were not for him. So I just want to say thank you for believing and always being such a strong leader. So thank you so much to everyone who tuned in, who shared your comments, who shared your light with us. Our sister Saron here, she added a comment: retirement is not getting to 65. It is how much you can save and how fast you can save it. That is a great point right there. That is a wonderful point to end on from our audience. Matt, I would love to throw it back to you to sort of wrap up, as we wrap up the conversation, any advice, any words of encouragement, how you're staying positive these days, just to anybody tuning in as we wrap up this conversation.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that we were created to stay connected with each other. I know during these challenging times, it's hard to do that physically, but we've got technological advances where we can do that through Zoom, we can do that through FaceTime, we can do that on Viber. Remember, we can call each other too on the phone, the thing that we used to do 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it seems. It's important to stay connected with your family, with your friends, the people who you can count on, and then just it's important, again, like we mentioned earlier in this program, to do what you can to help others, the frontline workers, the people who are out there working hard every day, to support them, whether it's just emotionally, mentally, physically, financially. It's good to do what we can to help those people out there who are sacrificing and putting in the time to make sure that we overcome this pandemic as quickly and safely as possible. And then from a financial perspective, just know, like, everyone is on their own path, right? Like, you're listening to this and you're like, oh wow, like I don't know if I could ever achieve that. Yes, you can. It may take longer for you than for others, but don't let that discourage you from taking action today. Before we can learn to walk, we have to crawl, right? Before all of that, like before we can learn to walk, we have to learn to crawl in life. And I'm a big believer in just taking steps, and ultimately, like the quote we read earlier, brick by brick by brick, you're going to build your way to financial freedom. And I will leave just with one quote from Nelson Mandela. Uh, Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I think that is very important, because it is education that helps change who we are. It is education that helps change our perspective. It is education that helps mature us and helps develop our lives and helps us move in the direction that we were meant to move in. And when it comes to just money and talking about finances, that's to the path of financial freedom. And I just want to say thank you to you, Hannah, for coordinating this. And I know this was long overdue. Things happen in life that made it difficult for us to get together. But I'm thankful that, you invited me here to be able to share and hopefully inspire some people to get on it, to make it happen.
Absolutely. And one last time, how anybody tuning in can keep up with your awesome platform.
Yeah, it's Habesha Finance. YouTube seems to be the place that I'm more engaged with. Obviously, we have a Facebook group, but really it's wherever you're most comfortable. If you like to be on Facebook and you want to join the Facebook group, there's the Habesha Finance Facebook group. If you're more of the YouTube community, I know they're like, it's unbelievable how, the different platforms cater to different peoples and personalities. And so whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, you can just type in Habesha Finance and you'll see me there, and try to connect and try to just learn more about each other and hopefully help grow and learn to help each other grow on this journey to financial freedom.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you, brother, for being a light out here, for just encouraging us, for
Thank
sharing
you.
this free education. Please keep it going. We encourage you to keep it going, and we thank you. We thank you all, everybody who tuned in with us
Yeah,
tonight
thanks,
or this
folks. Yeah.
morning, wherever you're tuning in from. We just say thank you from Matt and me. Thank y'all. We're sending y'all a lot of love and light, and we just want y'all to know, stay strong. We are all going to get through this together, and wherever you are, we're just giving you a big virtual hug. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and make sure to follow Matt. Stay connected with Habesha Finance. Bye.